to all. This is the class for climate change and sustainable development. I am Dr. Bappu Kumar Naik, from Department of Art and Applied Science, Parul University. Since last 2 3 class we are discussing about sustainable development, sustainability, and the 2020 agenda, that is 17 SDGs. We are studied in details. But in this class we are going to study details about sustainable development and the relationship with the climate. What are the different things? Mainly, as we are environmentalists, we are focusing on climate change and environment pollution, all these things. So, what is the relation between sustainable development and climate change? Is directly proportional or inversely proportional? And how we can combat the climate change with the sustainable development? So obviously, sustainable development is related to climate change because due to anthropogenic activity, various types of environmental pollution that lead to degrade the climate and climate change occurs. Due to the global warming, climate change, all these things, the environment can deteriorate and the whole human civilization can suffer. And not the human civilization, but also the all other organisms, living things that are live in the earth, they also suffer. So the climate change is very much important factor, and we have to defeat the climate change or combat the climate change by taking several actions. So in SDG number 13, the goal number 13, it deals with climate action, not climate change. Climate change is the change due to anthropogenic activity or environmental changes. But climate action or climate change are both are different. We are taking some measures that can be combat the climate change. We already discussed in that goal number 13. So let's understand what is climate change and how it is affect the sustainable development. So let's see one small
Eight years left to end poverty and hunger, to halve global emissions. It didn't start out as planned. We're not moving in the right direction. Years of progress lost in the pandemic. Escalating conflicts, climate breakdown. So where are we now? For decades, we successfully fought poverty. Now it's on the rise, again. 1 out of 10 suffer from hunger, more people than ever forced out of their homes. Climate disasters increasing. Droughts alone estimated to displace 700 million people by 2030. This year, CO2 emissions hit a new record. At this rate, annual emissions will be 14% higher in 2030. Meanwhile, fossil energy receives $700 billion in subsidies from governments.
Your government.
Safe water and sanitation not made accessible fast enough. Progress must quadruple to cover all people by 2030. Women are held back at all levels. At this pace, by 2030, 825 million children won't have secondary level education. Human rights, health, and equality all hurt in the wake of war and disaster. Disrupted economies, food and energy crisis, and galloping costs of living damage global solidarity. Everything interconnected. Everyone intertwined. Business as usual won't cut it. Even though we made progress before, Going back to pre-pandemic ways is not enough. We need a new paradigm built on the pillars of our 17 goals. Rethink conventions. Flip the orthodoxies. Governments, organizations, corporations, citizens of the world, snap out of it. It's time for bold climate action. To act for women and girls. For social justice and inclusion. Scale up the transition to renewable energy. Create 85 million green jobs. Phase out fossil fuel subsidies and tax carbon. $2.8 trillion. Keep your promises. Support developing nations. Write off debts. Free up $1 trillion for climate resilience, people, and communities. $500 billion for Africa to achieve universal energy access by 2030. Commit to a circular economy now. New, resilient food systems. They can cut waste by 17%. Strengthen domestic financial institutions. Make insurance and banking accessible to everyone. Scale up the digital transformation to educate the 1.6 billion kids who missed school in the pandemic. Educate girls, including the 130 million not in school now. Ensure women's equal share of decision-making. Eliminate discrimination against female workers and boost productivity by 40%. We cannot afford to leave anyone behind. We have a to-do list. We have the resources. 8 years to reach our goals. We're on this planet together. So let's work together. Let's get the list done.
So let's understand clearly what is climate change and other things. So development and climate change were introduced in a same chapter of economic survey last year for the first time. Because previously what's happened, development and climate change that are not they think the environmentalists or the people are that think that they are not the same thing. But from last time they are interlinked. The climate change is related to the development and development of the country, development of nations. In 2012, since the nature has a sense of urgency of action because there is alarming change in the climate due to the development action. So building of infrastructure, building of all other things, and industries, industrialization, urbanization, that leads to a severe climate change or alarming rate of climate change. So climate change reflects in several ways, such as polar ice melting, sea level rising, irregularity of the seasons, and many more things. So these are having some natural calamities. There are bring some natural calamities like a thunderstorm, all tornadoes and tsunamis, all the things, landslides. So due to the anthropogenic activity, the climate change occurs. So these need urgency to be combat this climate change. So there is a relation between environment and climate change. So people will know. So in 2012, first time they are going to see or having making a relation to the climate change development. So from that we are thinking that our development action to be very much effective to the climate, and this can be affect our living standard or living style. So the relevant statistic, the mixed story tell us that strong accept
science what weekly reflect the corresponding material correction. We are knowing that it is very affect our climate change development. So we could not stop the development. We could not reduce it or cannot minimize it because development is very much necessary to cope of these nowadays. All nations are growing or developing. So if someone is remain underdeveloped, then they are having some difficulty. So what's happened? The countries, the nations, the peoples, they are ignoring the climate change. So suddenly what happened? The climate reflects these consequences. So it is the people are thinking, the United Nations Assembly, they are thinking that there is severely required to take necessary action in order to combat the climate change. So the causes and concerns are a volatile mix of erratic weather, that is the mainly the climate change symptoms, then natural disasters, enormous pressures on the vulnerability of the clean air, water, energy, together with the problems of poverty and hunger. That's also to the concern policymaker, particularly developing countries. Actually, the developed countries who are already developed their economy, developed their country, they are having suitable technology to combat this action. But developing country, they are focusing only on development at the cost of the environment. So total global climate change is mainly due to the developing countries activity. It is mainly to industrializations and all these things. If you have seen in last 20, 30 decades, what's happened? A huge amount of growth of carbon dioxide that can be grow in the atmosphere from the 0.0003 ppm to sorry 0.03% to 0.412%. So what's happened? This carbon dioxide increase in carbon dioxide is mainly due to the industrialization and deforestation. So whatever we are going to do, that can be affect the climate, obviously, and the weather and natural disaster. All these things are happening, and it affects the clean air, water, and clean energy. So if you are using thermal power plant, a thermal energy to produce electricity, then obviously the consequences are in the form of SO2, NO2 that can be released in the form into the atmosphere, and that can be affect our climate. So it is very much important thing to know the consequences as well as to utilize our resources and to concern the what is the effect and how it can be reduced. That means all the things we have to think. So there are different assembly and different summits are already held in past in order to combat the climate change or to think of the climate about the climate and the development all these things. So the R summit is one of them. The R summit is called the Rio summit also, and Rio plus 20 summit, that is it is 20th anniversary. And next 11th session of this conference is called COP 11, means Conference of Parties. And this convention on biodiversity hosted by India in Hyderabad, they are also all the things are actually working toward this or talking toward the climate change. What is the main concern about the climate change? How it's happened? How can be controlled? So these are all nations of the world. They are gathered together to combat or to just discuss what should be done, what can be done, what cannot be done. These all these things are discussed in this conversation or in this is conferences and parties. So COP 11 is the very most important session, and because in this many of the countries are participated and they come forward to beat the climate action. How to beat the climate action? They are developed plan for the first time. So this is the step that can be taken by these countries unitedly. So finally, 18th session of the COP was United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change in Doha in December 12, 2012. In Doha, UNFCCC also having meeting in 2012, particularly especially to discuss the climate actions and climate change before the SDG 17 comes in the role. Because if SDG 17, SDG are comes to the role in 2015, but before 2015, we have concern, we have know the consequence, we have to discuss about all these things about climate change and what is the development, all these things. So actually there is some results that may come out, some declaration they may sign, some MOU may sign and some of the steps to be taken to combat the climate change is very much necessary so that different conventions, the summit that are also takes place in the past to combat the climate change or to take necessary steps in the climate change. So among them, our summit that is Rio 20 is also a important summit. At home, we launched 12th 5-year plan to execute home as a faster, more exclusive, sustainable growth process. That means India 12 5-year plan that is governed by that is planned by the government to take different actions or to development. There are development plans or there is sustainable plan that can be implemented in fifth year interval. So in 12 5-year plan, our government has introduced this climate change and sustainable growth in the main agenda of our plan. So it is the first time that 5-year plan has sustainability prominent focus because before that sustainability point is not in focus. So first 5-year plan that is 12 5-year plan in our government of India that has spent money or spent allocated some budget to work on that. So think the sustainable development and climate change how it is important because without irrespective of all financial irrespective of poverty, hunger, all these things, climate never seen the people, never discriminate the rich and poor, all this. If something disaster happen, then slow down and it can have it can and what happen it can affect all the people. So this government has also takes upon certain activities, spending some budget, allocating some budget to come to actually work on this action on climate change. So the 12th plan that honor obtain lower carbon growth strategy and adding momentum to the ongoing policy program on the development, environment, and climate change. Actually, this is a strategy how this climate change can be beat because the carbon dioxide emissions are so high that it can be with the lower the carbon dioxide emission and the adding the more and more green technology to the our industry organization, then obviously the carbon monoxide gas can be lower and by the planting of tree, afforestation can be done so that what happens, the climate change can be beat by the different activities or these plans of the government can be executed by each level, the district level, from to the local level to the national level and state level. So by means by the collaboration of all the officials, all organizations, all NGOs, they come forward to work on the climate change and the climate that is reduce the carbon growth. That means reducing the carbon dioxide emission. What are the different methodologies, technologies, what can be done? These are all discussed in this plan. So this is very much necessary to take necessary actions regarding the climate change. So India government also takes suitable decision regarding this plan. So in the world, population crossed 7 billion. Nowadays, see this, so population growth is so much high that it cannot be controlled. Yes, it controlled, but the demand of the population is so high. So somehow, what happened? We are neglecting this climate or environment in place of the growth and all these things, economic and financial budget and growth. So some restrictions are there to work on that because population growth, development, all are very much necessary as compared to the climate change. So urbanization also grow how much demand resources according to the study. That means global domestic product (GDP). See, due to the corona period, GDP of India is lower down, but nowadays it again recovered. And the Human Development Index that is 2.5% per year. So continue to increase the variation and inequalities between these regions still exist. It never be stopped because population is increasing, the demand is increasing, so the uses of natural resources as well as uses of environment and the byproduct is pollution also increases. So all these things are we neglect, cannot neglect. So keeping on mind what happened, we are thinking that all these things what can be done and what are the policies should be made so the climate is can be safeguard and we can beat the climate change or combat the climate change. Because this also again one study also point that growing pressure on agriculture, water, fishes, and resources this also degrades the climate or this also hampers the climate. These also are responsible for the climate. So what is the man? Whenever sometimes the growth also is responsible for this main natural disaster or climate change mainly the global warming, acid rain, all the ozone holes. These are consequences of our usefulness or anthropogenic activity. and the growing state and developing countries that are the most responsible for this.
Whereas we have seen many examples where climate change affects sustainable development, and for the most anthropogenic activity, we are also uh, doing unnecessary things that can be lead to climate change. So here, at the same time, global greenhouse gases emissions have continuously been rising. The climate change mainly due to the global warming, and the global warming is due to the greenhouse effect. And some of the greenhouse gases that are continuously rising day by day due to anthropogenic activity. Mainly among these greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, which is rising most significantly since the industrial revolution started in 1960. When it looks in the graph, before 1960, the carbon dioxide of the atmosphere is in steady level, but after industrial revolution, the carbon dioxide emission rises exponentially. Since 98, from 1980 to 2005, it has raised increase of 21% overall growth of carbon dioxide. So this carbon dioxide gas, which is most important gases that can have potential to capture heat, that's why it is called greenhouse gases. Although greenhouse gases are very much essential to keep the temperature warm of the Earth atmosphere or Earth, and which is most necessary for the sustainable life in the Earth. But when excess carbon dioxide which are emitted and they are not able to sink or not able to capture by the green plant, then it can lead to global warming and it can increases the overall temperature of the Earth exponentially. So in 2021, global investment in the renewable energy sector such as 17% and to $257 billion, that is hinting at other records. That means we are using in the last 10 to 20 years, we are using more amount of renewable energy, and so that our consumption on dependence on the non-renewable energy that can be decreased. So nowadays also several scientists, several organizations are working in the field of renewable energy. So with dependency that can be decreased the thermal power for petroleum and fossil fuel. So the hydro power, solar power, wind power, all these are the new generations of non-renewable energy sectors which can be having more importance as compared to the fossil fuel or renewable, non-renewable energy sources. So carbon dioxide can be reduced with the help of these small initiatives. The global community is now working on the set of sustainable development. So it is possible to interchange the Millennium Development Goal in the post 2015. That means, as we have already discussed in previous class, 2015, before 2015, that goals are 8 and the 8 are called Millennium Development Goals. But after 2015, the goals are 17 and this is called Sustainable Development Goal. So before 2015 also, the carbon dioxide emission gases are alarming. So there are many treaty and many summits are there which can be the scientists and the nation, they are gathering together for making decision regarding the carbon dioxide emission, how to control the carbon dioxide emission. This is the main thing which can be causes global warming, greenhouse effect, as well as overall it has take part in the climate change. So carbon dioxide emission control is the very much essential for that the climate change can be controlled. Next is the key environmental challenges which have been sharper in the past 2 decades. That are what are that global warming and this industrialization we having and biodiversity loss, deforestation. These are different environmental challenges we have to tackle. And the state of environment report by Ministry of Environment Forest that is issues under 5 key challenges posed by India, which are climate change, food security, water security, energy security, and managing urbanization. These are the different things which are being rising concern nowadays because climate change is very much nowadays. Often nowadays they are occurring due to this no food production, agriculture is hampers, water scarcity also there, food security should be there. So energy security means energy security be there, and
managing urbanization. So, or managing urbanization, that means when we are managing different large group of people living in urban area, that means we provide for a proper standard living standard. We have to need clean water, clean air, food, green energy, all these things. So in order to provide these things to the urban people or to the population, large growing population, we have to save, or we have in our hand excess amount of all these things: food, water, air, and energy. So to become a supplier, we have to secure these things in previously. So these issues are faced due to mainly climate change. Previously, no one bothering about food, water, air, all these things, energy. But nowadays, due to the demand, due to the growing populations, they are bothering. We are now have to store these things for our next use. If sometimes the power gone, then you never be, you feel uncomfortable. Sometimes internet gone, then you feel insecurity. So you are feeling uncomfort. So this is due to we are habituated in this thing, and our future generations also, they are also habituated. So we will not give such a situation where they have no electricity, they have no energy. So now we are searching for alternate means of electricity, alternate means of energy, that is called green energy. So we are not, we are also closing the dependency of this energy to green, non-renewable to renewable energy. So in many agriculture sector also 58% of population still depend, because non all peoples are living, or non all peoples are depend on the job or any other sectors. So mostly India people have, India is a agricultural land, so most of the people are depend on agriculture, and agriculture in most India is depend on the rain precipitation, and which is due to climate change, the precipitation rain occurs hazardly, and it cannot be fulfill the requirement of our agriculture. So we have to manage the water resources. We have to manage uh, the water in order to affect the meet the need of the agriculture. But due to some unfavorable circumstances, the climate change, we cannot cope with that. So many food crops agriculture while going waste. So this is very much necessary to combat the climate change, and in India mostly agricultural field of India. So the livelihood and water storage, Himalayan glaciers, all are the major rivers and underground which are sea level rising, and these are the closure threats due to the climate change. Not only affect by agriculture, the lower coastal zone of the all India are so much kilometers that three sides of the India are covered with coastal zone. So the sea level rises, so many cities, major cities of India get submerged. Many people get affected. These are major things that we are taking concern. And some of the rivers which are originate from glaciers in like Himalaya, if the glacier melts, then floods are occurring in the river. See, in last 2 to 5 years, so many rivers are flooding in, and so many lives, so many wastes, and so many losses are due to this flood in different rivers of India. So these are the major concerns which are have to face by us, and we have to make a proper planning, proper management, and to in order to combat these things, or to combat this climate. So as per National Communicational Summit emitted by the India UNFFC, that is United Nations for Committee, and it is projected that annual mean air surface air temperature rise at the end of the century is 3.5 degree to 4.3 degree, whereas sea level along the Indian coast has been rising about 1.3 millimeter per year. If this is the concern, then sooner the sea level is rise and submerge many coastal area of the India, and the temperature also increasing 2.5 to 4.5, that means 1 degree temperature per year. So this is very much necessary to think what can we do to check all these things. So these climate change projections are likely to impact human health, agriculture, water resources, natural ecosystem, biodiversity, all these things. Because climate change is mostly we are depending on climate. So climate change is the most significant challenges which is for the sustainable development, because on the way of sustainable development, climate change is actually resistant. So it threatens many millions people and affects many lives and all these resources and natural resources, people, and living standard of the people. So at the same time, we have never and better how to solution available. So we have to make a practice, make a plan, make a strategy in order to beat the climate change and tackle the crisis due to the climate change. So that the people can live a better life, better perspectives in the world. And this climate change is not also just a single term, because climate, we are saying the climate change, but it is not just a single term. It is happening not just by today, it is a long term, and we are depleting the nature, polluting the nature, and utilize our resources in such a way that it can be happening day by day. And it is for a long term process, not a single day we can stop this process. So there are many countries nowadays suffers more due to the climate change. For example, in Russia, it suffers mostly a increasing temperature or a remarkable process in the field of increasing temperature. So temperature increases significantly from 2 to 3 degree in a year, so that can be very much affected by melting of the different Siberian ice and glaciers. So this is the alarming conditions. Russia has also projected get above 2 degrees centigrade threshold, that is threshold limit, and if the 2 degree centigrade temperature increases in Russia, then all the glaciers are melt and the sea level rises and they're having facing different systems. This is the alarming situation. So performing this thing, by seeing these things, we can see that all countries, irrespective of the nations and all this area, we are suffer from this climate change. So there are division. We have to take different decisions in order to take action against the climate change. So, what are the action and what are the solutions we have taken? That are the most important. In India, we have beaten the part of 94 multilateral environmental agreement. That means every agreement, everything we are going just for environmental protection, the afforestation, wildlife conservation, biodiversity conservation. All these major impact and major things can be done in order to beat the climate change. So 94 different agreements are signed, environmental agreements signed by India, and we are working on this. India has also voluntarily agreed reduce the emission intensity of GDP by 20 to 20%. That means emission intensity. Emission intensity is the release of gaseous pollutants, which are many more pollutants which can be reduced by 20 to 21%. We have to bound to do this because uh, in some days, if we are releasing so much pollutant, then we cannot control the climate change, and we are suffering. Our future generations suffer more. Indian economy also is catering alternatively having a lower carbon and sustainable path in terms of carbon intensity or GDP. So further the lower the carbon strategy. So carbon emission in terms of carbon footprint, India is not the highest thing, but it is because it is a developing country. But the United Nations and America, England, these are the developed countries which are affect the most toward the contribute toward most to climate change and the carbon footprint. In world, the country Bhutan is the only single country which has negative carbon footprint. That means it has negative zero balance of emissions. So all countries should not be achieve these things, but it can be minimized according to their GDP and growth and development, because it is very much necessary in order to restore the climate, restore the forest, and restore our environment ultimately. So different policymakers on the world, they are also taking different oaths. They are making different policies in order to protect the environment and and for the climate change, taking actions towards climate change. So there is a great uncertainty which is real, which is fake, and which is the local, how the actions can be implemented, because without the participation of the local community or local people, it cannot be achieved 100%. So coupled with this different types of actions and different types of agreement, different types of policy, all nations and states and peoples are bound to do this. So if you are doing by our heart that climate is our resources, we can save our future generation, then it will only happen. So many decisions to be made today are long term, not cannot be achieved in a single one day or 2 days. So this long term goal should be achieved by the collaboration of all states and all countries in the whole world. So these consequences are different, sensitive to due to conditions that water, energy, agriculture, fisheries, all forest, disaster management, all these things are prepared by this policies maker and management gone wrong if these climate change are adversely affected. For example, each country will be find its own way to deal with uncertainties, and the best option is low carbon growth. Here I already said that every country they are developing or develop or underdeveloped, they have their own strategy to beat the climate change and make it as small as minimum amount of carbon footprint, which can be reduce the carbon growth of the world. That means carbon dioxide emission that can be lower. The main thing is carbon dioxide emission. We can lower the carbon dioxide emission so that we can combat the climate change and we can reduce the uh, different type of gases emission so that the climate change can be not affected. So in 2005, it is reducing the different gas. For example, we have now talking about the Russia. Russia had remarkable progress in 2005 since it is releasing so much amount of gas, fossil fuels as emission. So Russia is the first country in alarming state. So he is taking action to reduce the gas emissions so that now it can be somehow going towards the way of this sustainability or sustainable development in terms of carbon, lower the carbon footprint. So Russia also growing their forest area and forest land in order to capture the CO2 by converting CO2 into CO, also converting CO2 into oxygen, which is very much essential and the main conversion taken by this green plant. So he is planting lots of forest area, covering the forest area, and now he is reducing the carbon footprint. So there are different options, opportunities for everyone, every nation. But how the nations can be implemented, this is the important thing. If the nation is not implemented properly, people are corrupt, the officers are corrupt, then what happens? These policies and these laws and these are not acting everywhere universally. So this may be great hamper to the human beings and sustainable development goal cannot be achieved. So each of these climate processes, climate change is bring a short-term benefit and lower the current future emission. So by today we are working, then it can be going for a long term, and this small short-term tasks that can be go for a long term, and we have just minimize the use of carbon emission. So looking forward, the main source of carbon dioxide emission is burning of fossil fuel. So the main motto is to reduce the fossil fuel utilizations and dependency was shifted to renewable non-renewable resources to renewable resources. So nowadays all countries are working on that. The transportations are majorly dependent on fossil fuels nowadays. Electric car, EV are being to emerge, and lots of electric vehicles are coming, and we can be successfully. So in next 2030, 30 and 40, it may be seen that totally we are dependent on renewable energy and we are shifted non-renewable to renewable. So in the road you can see all cars are electric or hydrogen cars. So this is the one major step that should be taken, or that must be taken in order to combat the climate change. But there is a for every action we have to need a cost. So if you do not have the proper funding, do not have the proper R&D facilities, so we cannot achieve that. So for this, the World Bank and United Nations are jointly working and giving different funding to the developing country and all other who are working on this area. So this is very much important because for climate change actions we are very much interested to, because this climate change is severely affected our to the human populations, and in order to combat the climate change there are certain strategy planning that will be needed to lower the carbon dioxide emissions and reduces the carbon footprint in the world. So this is very much necessary, and for that public have also aware about what is the sustainable development, what is carbon footprint, how we can reduce it, about forestation, what can be benefited to globally. So this is education is must be a greater challenges. So some developed country and literate country that have to be adapt these things gradually, but some which countries are poor and dealing with poverty and finance, they cannot be come with this. So this making all this in a line way, World Bank and these different financial agencies they can be come forward. At the World Bank Group is committed to working this is the most matter because the World Bank will get finance this type of country to help them to work on this achieving the goal. So 9 billion people is now nutriously 2050 needed to make agriculture resilient and productive changing landscapes. That means we are reselling or resilient the agriculture. We have to change the agricultural method, all these things in a sustainable way when just reduce the food wastage and increasing the consumption of green energy. This will be best method to reduce the carbon dioxide emission and this supports by the sustainable energy and the all goal are implemented effectively if there should be understanding, better understanding and collaborating in all the group and all the nations worldwide. Then these are solutions for Indian sectors also. This is applicable because the vast majority of the work under this Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme that we in Manrega are like to link the soil, water, and resources because this get opportunity or this get job employment to the rural people as well as this is the way in which they are working that are in a green way. We do not use some machineries, we do not leave some carbon footprint. And these Manrega schemes are working in accordance with this solution of the climate change and this sustainable development. So these schemes may mobilize and develop capacity of community realizations, utilize natural resources in a sustainable manner, and potential can be further developed. First thing, we are utilizing the resources in a sustainable manner and the people of rural people and the urban people they have to know what is these things and why this is understanding what is the impact and what the remedies of this thing. So the country has been making various progress and fast progress by increasing renewable energy. See nowadays India wherever you go you can see we are working on this electric vehicles and hydrogen power or wind power. So now we are also increasing our progress in the fields of renewable resources, renewable energy or green energy, making small contribution or towards the beating the climate change. Because more pollution, the more it can affect the climate. So we have to reduce the climate change. We have to work on the zero emission strategy or zero global footprint, carbon footprint. So this renewable source of energy that can be a great step towards this reducing the carbon dioxide emission and reducing the carbon footprint. So in 2000 up to 2011, a 60% increase to 12% increase in the renewable market. This means is there we are growing in the field of renewable sector, renewable source of energy. India is also not behind. Our country is developing, so we are progressing slow by slowly. So this is we can adopt this technology where our scientists, our different organizations, they are also working on this, and our government can also give some funding. World Bank also provide funding. So by collaborating all these things and with the help of some of all peoples of the nation, we can achieve these things. We can control the climate change, and this is the very much necessary step for this. So climate change is ultimately affect all people, all things, poverty, linkage from finance, all the things, health issues. So we have to focus on this climate change and the relationship between climate change and sustainable development directly, a direct relation. If climate change is more, sustainable development is less. This is directly or inversely proportional, not directly, but inversely proportional. So in order to get working progress towards sustainable development, we have to reduce the footprint, carbon footprint, reduce the carbon dioxide emission, or in other words, we can reduce the climate change. So we are working on that. What are the positive outcomes for these steps, different steps? The positive and the poverty head ratio declined 7.3% in 2005 to 2010. That means when we are working on these different schemes, different policies related to climate change and sustainable development, then the poverty head count. That means we are developing that our people can get proper job, having a good lifestyle and good way of getting clean water, having sufficient amount of energy, sufficient good quantity of prosperity. So this poverty is decline. So this decline rate, that means we are developing, and this is very much great thing or good news for us. So maternal mobility rate that dropped from 301 to 10,000 on large lives birth, that is 2003 1 to 2009. The old data, but the maternal mortality rate, that means the birth rate increases and death rate decreases. Previously, there is no proper medical facility, no proper sanitation facility, no proper clean water. So nowadays we are just developing our infrastructure, developing our hospitalization, all these things, technology, all these things we can increase. We say that we are developing day by day. Literacy rate also has been constantly rising and estimated to 82.4% for men and 65% women. 2011 census. Obviously, this literacy rate is rising, and our people are getting literate completely because literacy is the main concern to know or understand about the sustainable development, what is the importance of climate change, what is the importance of carbon footprint, and how it can be commonly get reduce the emission, carbon dioxide emission, and commonly working on this achieving the sustainable development goal and reduce the climate change. So this is very much necessary. So India is the growing country, and it is slowly advancing in the field of this thing. Then what is grim reality? Reality is the actually what the data that we are present that may not be same as in the ground field. So increasing population, urbanization, and growing demand of water, land resources have severely impacted the quality availability of water, soil, other resources. Because we are talking in a thing that are actually not implemented in the real field. So what are the main problem? Main problem rises due to the population increases, urbanization, and the growing demand of water. Because whenever we are having higher population and we have limited resources, obviously there should be a fight and there should be a conflict between the people and the thing. So this is the reality. So you have to working actually in real field, not in the pen and paper. So besides this, rising energy needs another area of concern, and rapid growth of unique corresponding growth also, energy also, supply is also required in order to growing the field or growing the knowledge and the combating the climate change. So presently large share of our energy demand is made through the coal or fossil fuel or oil. This will be and will continue and continue. So nowadays we are making it sustainable by blending 20% of ethanol in fossil fuel. That up to success till now. So nowadays 20%, and next 10 years maybe it is 100% ethanol. So in the dependency of these fossil fuels should be zero. And also somehow it is not be zero, then we are depending on some renewable source of energy like solar power, wind power, all these things whenever it is required. But the major part of we are depend, that is transportation sector and industry sector, that fossil fuel or coal, that is the most important thing that will be necessarily needed in order to go in order to run a factory, in order to run our transportation mechanism. So one day we are continuing these things. One day we combat these things and we are having a positive outcome that we are overcome these issues. Energy issues always be there because our India does not generate so much energy or so much do not have any um, fossil fuels so much quantity that it will be large in so many years. Nowadays, we are importing some petroleum by the Gulf country because they have the different reservoir of the fossil fuel. But in one day, they are also going to finish. So up to that, we should enjoy because that is not the sustainable development. Sustainable development focuses not to finish the resources, but utilize properly so that take long time to finish or our future generations that also we have comfortable time to develop a newer thing or renewable resources 100% so that what happens we can the dependency can be finished by from this fossil fuel and renewable resources. So this is very much essential in order to get educated, in order to know what are the things all are actually field visit and field reality is required. And for this, we have to work in a ground level, not in a paper and pen based level. Or we have to spend lot of money, we have to funding some money to develop the R&D facility regarding the renewable resources. Okay, then international and collaborations are also very much needed, because not single country can contribute, or say not even single country that alone can be combat the climate change, but it is globally. So it is very much essential to combine all these countries, irrespective of nations, irrespective of the different climate, irrespective of different government, all should be collaborate, and the combined effect that can be also working in the field of this carbon dioxide emission or climate change. So the combined effect should be effectively working in order to achieve the goal, achieve the target, that is reduce the pollution and increase the environmental sustainability, or sustainable development can be achieved by this international collaboration and all states, all the nations throughout the world. So in order to combat climate change, international collaboration is most needed, because irrespective of all nations and all things, actually we need to collaborate to solve the problem. So there have been a global call for the cooperation and action and collaboration, such as research and innovation, which can share the knowledge to each country, and we can combat the climate action, or we can reduce the global carbon dioxide emission, which can also reduce the global warming and the climate change. So in order to clearly means in order to jointly we can and work progress together to for the climate action and climate change, to reduce the climate change. So there are international forums which are dedicated to climate change and environment. So many types of forums are there. We can directly working or indirectly working in the action climate, in the form of climate actions, and the reduce the climate change. So we should collaborate. All countries should collaborate with this type of organizations, and all country of the nation, all nations of the world, they have jointly working together to bring the sustainable development, which is more applicable, because all countries are not equally technically equal or financially equal. So if the country having financially strong, they can help the poor country, or the country which are technically strong, they can help the other country. So by the joint venture and joint collaborations, we can and reduce the carbon dioxide emission and effort to bring combat the climate change. So discussions are also regularly going happen, because some international forums are there. They are regularly meet the head, country head, or nation heads, which are representatives. They can meet regularly, and they discuss about the problem and effort how to do in order to reduce the climate change. So ambition and goal are set up in every meeting, every agenda. The goals are set up, and according to that, they are working on the to fix that goal and toward the mission vision of the goal. And this type of meeting, collaboration, seminar, joint ventures are happening and in regular time interval. So provision of finance and technology are developing countries. They can share their technology and finance to other country and other institutions. Through the medium, we can be very helpful to combat the climate change and reduce the carbon dioxide emission. For the capacity building also, capacity building means they have the nations which are not adequately adequate financial resources, they can also develop financial, and they can also getting help from the developing country. So there is a common thread that in negotiation we can run into all the forum. So it is to combat the climate change. This is the main thing. From these, all countries are jointly addicted, or they are joint by together. So international collaboration is most needed, and the effort is also very much essential to setting the final goal, that is all of goal is one, that is to combat climate. Then one of the such summit, that is called Rio Summit, that is called Rio Plus 20 Summit, the United Nations Conference and Sustainable Development UNSCD was held at June at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in June 2012, that is also called as Rio Plus 20, that has attained the head of the state level. That means 20 years ago, or 20 years, 20 nations are jointly venture to bring in Rio de Janeiro, and they are discussed about the climate thing. So this is the first things we are going to be discuss, and taking actions, make a momentum understanding, a meeting of understanding that we have working on these things, and the people's or the nations or representatives that has joined to discuss what to do to combat the climate change. So main objective is to renewed political commitment of the sustainable development. So how we can progress towards sustainable development, that is the main thing, and review progress made, identify implementation gaps. That means what are the gap, what are the findings that we can be work on them. So details, technical and financial as well as planning objective all are set in this agenda. So these new emerging challenges of these United Nations conferences on sustainable development, that before that the challenges of this climate is seen, because 20 years ago in Rio de Janeiro 1992 it was happened. First they are meeting the they have developed the concept of the climate action or climate change, how we can protect the climate. So after 20 years they can sit again another conference in 2012 to discuss what is the progress, what is the main thing that can be happen, and what is the what is next to be happen, next to be do, what to be do to get the vision and mission that we have to decrease the pollution and increase the environmental conditions. So the main themes, there are two themes are there. One is green economy of the content, sustainable development, and another is the development, and other is poverty eradication. And institutional framework for sustainable development. That means green economy. That means the development and having a financial strong become financial strong, not the cost of environment, but that is with the environment. That is called green economy. And with simultaneously you can reduce the poverty, reduce the inequality. All these things are the major agenda to discuss on this Rio Plus 20 conferences, that is United Nations conferences for sustainable development. In all other institutional framework and sustainable development or working in this field are also they are discussed about the. So the matter of satisfaction of achievement, that India that in Rio outcome documents reforms equity and principle of among the Rio principles. That means India also taking part in this Rio de Janeiro the conferences and sign the momentum and taking the part that India has also reduced the carbon dioxide emission and reduce the climate action. So India together with the developing country play instrumental role for this. So see, India is also part of these conferences and also take part in the reduce the climate change. So this is especially in front of developing country, climate change and reducing developing country, which is a part of the sustainable development action. So development country have to take leading role in environmental protection, because those who are already developed, they are helping the developing and not developed country in terms of financial, in terms of technical and other forms, because they are already developed. So they know how they can be developed, but without compromising the environment. So this is the main thing. So environmental problem, without having environmental problem, without any consequences, how we are greenly or technically develop without hampering the environment. So this development are helping the other countries. Also they should support developing country, okay, finance technology, that is already discussed. And the outcome of documents are clearly state that green economy policies should be result and what they should not. So they make a list. In the list, they are clearly written what to do and what not to do, what should we do, what not should we do. And this document is the outcomes, and all countries participate in the Rio de Janeiro summit. They sign in the document. That means it is mandatory to all countries to obey this rule and policy in order to or in sake of the environment, because we are need a healthy environment for us and also our future generation. So this is is very much necessary now a step, because it is not a single day term or single day outcome. It takes long time to come in action. And the Rio 20 conference also be recommended to kick starting the process and developing SDG. That means the sustainable development goals that has come into existence in 2015, but this Rio de conference, regional conference is held in 2012. So in this conference, the name or the base of these sustainable development goals are being set up, because these are next step forward to this climate. Because before coming the sustainable development goal, the climate change is clearly seen, because so many changes in climate happen that is severely affected to our world or the population. So for next 2000 meeting in 2015 United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goal, the 70 goal come in extra. So sustainable development goals should be universal, global, and voluntary. This will be fixed in this, or this is must be outcome of the Rio or the Rio conference as well Rio 20 summit. From India point of view, this SDG need to bring together development and environment into a single set of targets. That means India is also taking part in the or obeying the international rules that is set up by the sustainable development goal. So India is also doing its own contribution. The Rio 20 outcomes also did not lead any scientific or specific commitment on the finance and technology front, because at that time the sustainable development goals are not in the force, so they are not thinking or not be compromising any finance or technology in front. So the developed country are having obligation and responsibilities need to commit to provision of adequate public funds, including fund transfer, technology transfer, etc., capacity building, because the poor country, the developing country are did not have so much fund to think about climate, to think about the environment. But the responsibility of developing countries very much come to existence, and they help to the other countries. Nevertheless, we hope that following up the process, Rio 20 summit, both finance and technology will be the issues living in the new strategy and the mechanism. So this is the shortcoming, and somehow it can be developed. It can be the baseline for develop the SDG in 2020, and the outcomes is SDG. The Rio 20 summit outcome is developing the idea or brainstorming the idea about SDG in the baseline point of view. So this is very much important in the form of, this is the first conferences regarding the environment and climate change, climate action, all these things, and the outcomes is SDG 17 SDG, which is clearly working towards sustainable development. That is also called a sustainable development goal. Then next is Convention on Biological Diversity. After that, global concerns of biodiversity also found and expression in Convention of Biological Diversity that is adopted in 1992. After this Rio de summit, the biological diversity is consideration, because previously the importance of diversity is not come in force. In order to check the climate action, or in order to check the climate change, in order to protect our environment, the biodiversity play important role, because all the animals, all the living beings that are present in a food chain or food web, that is its own importance. There are several types of organisms, they are playing their role in the food chain or food web. So the diversity is disturbed, then obviously the uh, environment is degraded and the ecosystem get depleted and become desertification, land degradation, all these things happen. So maintain the biodiversity is very much important in case in the indirectly as the to combat the climate change. So this convention of biological diversity come in existence in order to having is important. So objective of this conference are, firstly, conservation of biodiversity, that is our main theme of biological diversity convention, and secondly, sustainable use of its component. That means conservation is okay, important, but what we do, we have to use the biodiversity or use the ecosystem resources, but in a sustainable way. fair and adequate sharing of the benefit arising from the genetic resources. That means when you are utilizing some plant or animals for our own sake, then we have to preserve these genetic resources, not to extinct all the species and universally. So this is the main thing in the biodiversity objective of the Convention of Biological Diversity, and it is also near universal membership of 193 countries. It having 193 country having membership, but in the United Nations it's 189. Laterally you can join and 193. So all countries of the United Nations, they are the member of the Convention of Biological Diversity. So USA is the only major country that is not a party following the application of the CPT. So United States of America, that is a country only that is not following these activities, because he is having his own rule. And India also entered in Biological Diversity Act in 2002 and notified the rules in 2004 to give the effort to provision of CBD. Later, actually, India also joined in later 2002 and rules are found in 2004, because in convention CBD is happening in 1992. So whenever India also laterally joined in order to save the biodiversity conservation and utilization of natural resources in a sustainable way. So this is very much important to uh, combat the climate change. The biodiversity plays an important role for saving the ecosystem. Then the Prime Minister unveiled a communicative pylon on Hyderabad to mark COP11. That the conference of 11, that is Rio Summit, there also our Prime Minister has opened in Hyderabad. They have opened a convention and having a suitable in our own country. We are also discussing how to set up the goals according in line to this CBD or biological diversity, how to save the biological diversity in India. So it has been decided to establish diversified medium or museum garden on this site. That means we are setting different plants and saving plants animals through different by establishing a museum and a seed museum and seed museum, all these things, and garden. So it has a play a role to show the international community that we are also preserving the biodiversity, and we are also working to save the environment and combat the climate change. The national level, the effectively made and strengthen implementation of Biological Diversity Act. So in our law, in our court also, we are enforced Biological Diversity Act. That means we cannot be hunting and poaching different types of animals, plants, cannot cut a tree randomly. So these are the laws and policies that can be acting in our nations internally in order to save the environment. So biodiversity, environment, ecosystem, whatever may be, and that is indirectly related to the climate change. So provide support also state biodiversity board and local prepare people biodiversity register. The biodiversity convention conservation is done state level, national level, and local level. So all the things are involved, all the officials, all the people who are directly, indirectly related to this environment, they are involved, and the planning is going to be successful. And the Biodiversity Conservation Act we are going to get incorporated in our state level, district level, and in our local level. And maintaining a biodiversity register, whatever may be the things we are note down. So that is a baseline that we give a provided data that we have working on this field. Next is called Doha Climate Change Conference in 2012. Next international forum or international conference that is meet in Doha in 2012 in order to combat the climate change, or how to preserve the climate change, how to reduce the climate change, how to reduce the global warming, how to reduce the greenhouse effect, all these things. So Doha in 2012, the capital of Qatar, that is Doha, they have seat a conferences. They have jointly ventured to the different countries. So 26 November, this is the 18th session of Bido conferences, that is United Nations, or that is set in December 8 December 2012 at the capital of Qatar. So there are different decisions should be made that is that should be implemented by this member of country. So let's club together is Doha Climate Gateway. This is also called as Doha Climate Gateway. This aim is to advancing the implementation of the UNFCCC and the Kyoto Protocol. So the in order to change or in order to combat the climate change, we have to forcing and we have in this Doha climate change they are having agreement or they are having discussed the ways how they can working on this Kyoto protocol and the implementation of the rules and policies. The Kyoto protocol is nothing but how to reduce the greenhouse gases, how to reduce how to save the environment and how to reduce the climate change. This is all about there are all points are discussed in this Doha climate change conference. There are three issues or equity, equity, technology related IPRs and unilateral measures raised by India found to be this year. So India has having these three issues raised the first of regarding three issues of equity technology because all country or India do not have sufficient type or sufficient funding and technology that can be given by the developed country. So all countries are interrelated or all countries should be collaborated in the to work in the to sign to work to combat the climate change. So at Doha, India also ensured that no hasty decision has been taken and related to the mitigations of the agriculture sector and global level. And agriculture is sensitive sector for the developing country because some decisions are made and developed countries are made in against the agricultural practices because we are also the developing country, we cannot stop using fertilizer and pesticide in order to change the climate. So we are using, but in a sustainable way and in a regulative way. So that's why India does not have agree with the decision like, regarding these agriculture practices because developing country we are in agricultural country because most of the people are farmer in our India. So we cannot stop to use this type of thing. So other thing or we are agreed and this climate change in Doha conference has become successful. No specific target for mid-term financing also adopted. That means in 13 to 20 there is no TAR and no financing thing and we are only working in the working for the nations or working for the climate change and working for the environment. So while the conferences stopped support giving a mandate to International Civil Aviation Organization, the ICAO or International Maritime Organization, to initiate steps for curbing emission of the respective sector. And the absence of a decision on the sectoral framework for such action has left open possibility such as action being initiated in such a sector by respective international organizations. So there are different organizations and they are also taking some decision. They are also having some sectors. They are having some frameworks. The possibility to such a being initiated, and this is the different sector and initiated by this organization that have to be implemented in different nations. So this conference is having a successful outcome. Again, another thing on the positive side, participant Doha conferences succeed carrying the agreement on the Kyoto Protocol and ensure a second commitment period. That means whenever when the people or the country does not obey the rule of this due to some constraints such as developing countries due to the lack of finances and technology, they give is some rule or so they give some extent to obey this type of commitment and adjust to the environment. So second commitment, because second commitment, and the period for last period for a last period of 8 years, that is 1 January 2030. And the decision ensures that there will be no gap between first commitment and second commitment. Because first commitment is the country which are obeyed by this developed country, and second commitment are the commitment which are adopted by the developing countries. Because there are some constraints we are not going to be adopted directly. So after some times when we are sufficiently enable or for our capacity building is sufficient so that we can adopt this type of things or adopt to this climate change conferences outcomes. And the European Union also reduced the emission by 20% by 2020 compared to the 90. So 1990 to 2020, in 20, 30 years, they are reduced the carbon dioxide emission 20%. It is a very great outcome, because due to this outcome, we can reduce we have to reduce the carbon dioxide emission or reduce the carbon footprint, that is 20%. This is a great thing. So like that, we are going to increase our effort to reduce the carbon dioxide emission, which can be reduce the global warming and climate change, obviously. So government has also agreed to seriously work under the developing point, and develop a new set of arrangement and mitigation commitment and action applicable to all countries from the 2020 and adopted by 2015. Because 2015, when we are working on the sustainable development goal, the all of country, irrespective of all nations and positions, they should be obey, because sustainable development can be achieved globally, not individual country. So this is very much important outcome that we have influences. Then G20. Next discussion is under G20. So G20 is a group of 20 major economies of the world to the agenda to inclusive green growth during Mexican presidency event. That means 20 most major economy that have under come forward to work about this environment and climate change. It's called G20. And the aim of the introducing this green growth into the G20 agenda was support the transition on developing country, in particular low income countries, towards becoming the low carbon economies, as well as to enable country to become more resilient and climate change. Because 20 developed countries, they are going to support all developing country and developing underdeveloped country or low income country, because they are not going to in a phase to adopt all these climate change policies, because they have some restriction, they do not have some finance and do not have some capacity for this support of this thing. So the developing country, 20 developing countries, they are going to support all these things. So leaders of the G20 last year also collaborated in the climate finance study group, and effectively utilizing the resources. That means every year, 1 year or 2 years, they are sitting in a different assembly or different country to discuss what is the progress and what is and discussing agenda of the future thing. So India will also convey G20 leaders in summit in the first time in 2023. This year, India is going to be host G20 summit in 2023, and 43 leaders are delegates of the longest ever G20 will participate in the New Delhi, that is held in 10th September 2023. Recently, India has organized the G20 summit. And everywhere we are going to campaign. Our Prime Minister Narendra Modi also advertise so much as what is G20 and what is about details about the climate, importance of the climate, importance of the environment. So all common people, all officials, all literate people, that also know why we are going to be held or host the G20 summit. Because India is a developing country and it will now going to develop its GDP 4.5 to 6.5. So it can also, with the help of the developed country, so it is very much important in order to combat the climate change. So India is hosting this first time in 2023. Thus, although the G20 is referred to as a group, there are different participants or disciplinary of the ground between the members are in terms of income, stages, development, as well as per capita CO2. That is happening always, because developed countries, see this graph, developed countries having higher amount of per capita emission, because they are having utilized more energy per capita as compared to developing country or developed country. So India is the last year. India is the last number. They are They are using low per capita emissions, because India having large population and we are developing in developing stage. We cannot use so much energy as other developing country, only developed country. So all countries all country cannot be measured or cannot be obey those rules or for the G20 summit. So India can be hosting this year, and this can be spread universally. So the restrictions are in terms of income, maybe stage of development, which stage we are having developing or develop underdevelop, or how much we can have to go to progress, and per capita CO2. That means how, what is the population of the total country, and what is the energy they are using, and how much CO2 can be released per capita. So this is the different factors which can affect to effect for the G20 summit. So all countries, the USA, Australia, Canada, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Germany, Japan, all the things are developed country, and they have huge resources, huge that means in energy. They are utilizing per capita energy is very much high as compared to India, because they are already developed, the technology developed, and they are having adequate finance to utilize the thing. So India is become last, not the last, but here some other countries are also there. They are lower than India, like Somalia, Malia, all these things, Indonesia. So India is in a developing stage, and we are also contribute to combat the climate change. So next is financing the climate change. This is very much important, because without finance, without a budget of allocation, we cannot combat the climate, or cannot progress the actions that we needed to change, or in order to taking decisions. And so financing is the most important part of this climate change or climate. So the idea of global budget for carbon and its corresponding finance system, from the objective of stabilizing the greenhouse gases consumed by atmosphere, and only a small and fast closing window opportunity exists international community to take action to stabilize the global environment. That means very much low time is available to very much because it is a long process, and it requires lots of budget to finance to complete these different tasks in order to achieve the target. So UNFCCA also 2007, they estimated the requirement of $200 billion, that $210 billion additional annual investment required up to 2030 to return the greenhouse gas emission in current level. That means now the what is the level of greenhouse gases in 2030, as we are increasing the greenhouse gases, and our emissions are to be double triple, so we can return this, or we can be reduce the greenhouse gases in order to achieve the global climate change action goal. So there is a need of huge amount of budget is required. Further additional investment also needed, and that is annually 60 to 180 to $2 billion up to 2030. A huge amount of money should be needed for budgeting to take different technologies, purchasing, to spread awareness, to take the different actions regarding climate change. So the passage of the time, inadequate action, these estimators are being revised and optimized. So this is not fixed. So according time to time, there should be revised. This budget should be revised. This greenhouse gases emissions should be revised. All these things are time to time differs. And some domestic resources and mechanisms are also there. So most obvious resources financing climate changes is the government based support. So no one can be support without government help. So government is the major body to support this mechanism domestically, because most of it would from sectoral financial level, and adequate resource allocate resources different budget amount to different sections in the annual budget report. So these schemes can be adopted by most of the countries who are uh, part of this United Nations program to combat the climate change. So in 2010-11 also they found a different funding agency are formed on that is called National Clean Energy Fund (NCFF). They also out of a sales of 50 ton per coal that invest entrepreneurial venture to research in the field of clean energy technology. That means those who are using coal 50 RS50 means if you are using 100 ton of coal, you are giving extra 50 rupees for the additional R&D sector which can be utilized in the field of clean energy or clean technology by this separate body. So this cess will be imposed in order to gather some fund to research about this non research about this sustainable green technology, and we should move forward the non-renewable resources to renewable resources like solar energy, wind energy, and electricity, again hydroelectricity. So these are different funding resources we can or the government can be imposed to the different nations, and that can be used to R&D sector for this and this combat the climate change or to come action with this climate change goal. So recycling, relying solely the carbon taxes subsidiary may not be the most valuable policy. But this is not a valuable policy because this amount, a small amount, cannot be utilized or cannot be in a proper way because we are developing country. We cannot use or cannot allocate a huge amount of budget for this. So for solving this problem, the developing country should be helped and they should allocate huge amount of budget to the developed country in order to take the action of the climate change. So India is also expanding with a careful mix because India is also developing state. So it neither be denying or neither be having 100% capacity is healthy. So this is a mixed level of budgetary situation in India. So India are also taking part actively in this climate change. So this is the different expenditure that come in different in India, that environmental permitting subsidiary like a different right side of this is written as sewage and sanitation we use 1236 crore, soil and water conservation we use 26.6 crore. The budget allocate for expenditure in the field of this sustainable development, and fisheries 21.52 crores, forestry and wildlife 9696.36 crore, agricultural research and education 365 crores, and special area developing programming we have using 1560 crores, for flood national control only 175 crore, non-conventional energy over 77 crore, ecology and environment for 73 crore. So total 5,231 crore this will be allocated at the end of the January. This is the budgetary of the discussed in 2008 and 9 allocated, and this is mainly a old data, but nowadays we need more amount of money towards this sustainable development program or towards funding this type of climate change action. And so this is very much necessary to raise a fund and raise a fund and that can be utilized in several ways for this environmental sustainable ways and to combat the climate change and reduces the greenhouse gas emission. So greenhouse gas emission are actually the major cause of the climate change and green what is global warming. So it is necessary to work on that. So international sources an issue primarily it is own concern that India has struck out ambitious plans and policy to tackle climate change. Environmental issue that reflects strong to address the global public good. That means India is very much fond to rectify the issue and to work on the issue and to tackle the climate change in its own ways. So different states, different countries, and different situations they are going to involve their level of involvement in the climate change compared to climate change its level sustainable development is different. So India has a mixed type of category, but because it is a developing country and the population of India is large, so we cannot use large amount of budget, but we also do not deny to use the budget. So we have to using the budget wisely, and that can be very much helpful to this goal of that is Agenda 2030, that is sustainable development for the climate action. However, this is given scarcity of resources, competing demands of finding a matching resources is a very much challenges issue. So financial mitigations, outcome to her also we are implementing step by step. So India is a mixed state. We are using, we are participating in all these things, and we are also utilizing our fund. We are utilizing the amount we are sanctions. That means that is utilizing toward the climate actions and in different way. And also the different funding agencies of developing country also contribute some amount of budget to different countries which having do not are compatible, do not able to finance its own. So there are different categories are there according to a different level. All are working unitedly in order to combat the climate change or working in about the sustainable environment, because environment is the importance of the environment is understood by every country, and the people should aware what is the major importance and how we can sustain the environment for our future generation. So this is very much. There are different international resources also provided for the work of organizing and the greenhouse commission that is progress. The greenhouse commission that is expected to be instrumental challenging of significant 100 crores billions 100 billions US dollar annually to be mobilized in developing country. And I already discussed that the developed countries they are also sanctioned different amount of fund according to the its ability in order to addressing this climate change issue. Meanwhile, different funds are under the UNFCCC also contribute to different funds to collect different fund to contribute this addressing the climate change. So special climate change fund is one of them, least developed countries fund are one of them, and fund, adaptation fund. So there are three different heads. The funds are they are arranging and they are utilizing the fund towards this addressing the climate change issue. So, in spite of all challenges, we have also have, in spite of funded resource, all the things we know, all the things, but there are various challenges are there which should be addressed, uh, and these should be addressed differently with a different country, and the sustainable outlook also needed, and the challenges are addressed by the countries separately. So we have to look on this matter also. There are different challenges and outlook for sustainable development and the climate change. So the multilateral effect and sustainable development and climate change have lead to several positive outcomes. There will be still area of concern where we have to look further work is needed to safeguard the interest of developing countries in future deliberation. That means in spite of the positive outcome, we are spending so much money, so much spending so much, allocate so much budget, but some restrictions are there, some challenges are there, because all developing countries and all the country, all nations should not go with their building capacity and to adapt all these changes. So these are the different concerns are there. So we need more further. We cannot stop here. We are continuously improving and continuously working in this area. So this is very much necessary to understand the concern of the developing country or underdeveloped country, and that issues can be solved by me joint venture of this developed country by allocating special fund to them, and to know the importance of this climate change or climate action. This is very much necessary. So some of the challenges of India, in the India point of view, let's look some challenges are follow up and action and Rio 20 outcome document. So all documents they are signed by India in 2020 summit that are the cannot be a follow up, because there are some points or we are do not compromise our development in the terms of it. So the four processes mechanism of it. That means the future processes mechanism that we are cannot adopt because we are in a developing stage, and all the developed countries who adopt because they are in a growing stage, they are in a growth, they are already grown up or they are already developed. So especially on developing sustainable development goals and the processes of the financing strategy or technology is transfer that is very much needed, because we do not have such a technology, so we need transfer of technology and transfer of different budget allocations are needed. So there are this type of restrictions are there, and the restrictions can be overcome by the joint venture of all developing countries and the World Bank or funding agency, and by the technology transfer, all this. So also taking forward to climate change discussion in Doha, the key question to address are adequately equity involved arrangement, and that will be applicable in the past 2020 periods. That means majority of the concerns are addressed, but some of the concerns are should not be addressed by this developing country due to this type of restriction. So in future, in the next coming days, we should be or the developing countries should be participate and cooperate all these things in order to combat the climate change and the greenhouse gases, reduce the greenhouse gases emission, because this is the greenhouse gases are the major problems that is for climate change. And the greenhouse, like mainly carbon dioxide and methane and chlorofluorocarbon. These are the things we cannot stop because we have some restrictions are there. So the developed country are going to help that, and by joint venture we can also come out with the. So based on historic emission and responsibility, we see some there are boundaries are there, different countries are there, they are working on this. So developed countries should take the lead. Obviously, who are developed countries, they are simultaneously taking the lead in order to take responsibility to funding some agencies as well as funding different or technology transfer, all these things. However, according to June 2011 study by the Stockholm Environment Institute, that comparison of Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 please under the Canon Agreement, developing countries are placing greater costs in their greenhouse gas emission than developed countries. So it is going to observe that by the Stockholm Environmental Institute, they are stating that the developing countries are, in spite of their developing, they are cutting the greenhouse emission in greater extent as compared to developed countries. Because developed countries, they are already developed and they are in the stage of not to compromise. So they have, but developing country are compromise these things and they are in are reduces the greenhouse emission by obeying these things. So this is very much good thing because all countries should not be obey this type of reduction or greenhouse gas emission. India is also proactive in this regard, or India also cut down very much greenhouse gas emission since last decades. And the in spite of this interaction and ambitions, family in place policies and program. So there are different policies, programs are there. In spite of all these things, India cut down its greenhouse gas emission very wisely manner. So India is the right track for the cutting the greenhouse gas emission, and towards this responsibility is the responsible. India is very much responsible to taking actions regarding climate change, combat the climate change. So there is very much necessary to take this right track, which country is right track or not. First, only one country is right track and other country are not, then this is not going to help the globally. So India is actually having its correct way to enabling the environment, protect the environment by cutting the greenhouse gases in a huge way. So significant manners. So has a number of achievements and the credit. However, the challenges why India is growing, identify the key drivers and enable the growth. And there are infrastructure, transportation sector, housing, and other agriculture practices that makes this sector grow sustainability. Means we are working all these fields like infrastructure, transportation, housing, agriculture. India is the agriculture. Mostly India's are the depend on the farming or agriculture. So agriculture we are cannot cut down so much greenhouse gases because methane is produced due to the agricultural practice. So we cannot stop agriculture because it is a we are depend on agriculture. So what sector we are going to cut down, that is depend on country by country. So this is the main thing we are focusing. In which way we can reduce this greenhouse gas emission, and this will be not achieved by the only government rule and policy. This should be understand every citizen of the India, every citizen of the country, nation, so that they can make small contribution to cut down these greenhouse gases and take necessary actions regarding the climate change. And this is very much good for India that we are significantly reduce the carbon dioxide emission in some last decades. But we cannot obviously we cannot stop to emit. But as compared to the other countries, we are just comparing. As compared to developed countries, we are significantly reduced the greenhouse gas emission because there are some constraints are there. In spite of this constraint, we are progressing well. So India could go much a new few additional finance technology and made available through multiple process. Although India does not have sufficient amount of technology, India needs this technology transfer further from developing country in order to progress more and more. So this is very much necessary. The developed country role responsibility is to transfer the technology, funding the budget to country like India, which is developing stage, they are reducing greenhouse emission. So it should be think of all countries that we have to reduce the carbon footprint. We have to reduce our pollution level. So this should be the mindset of all countries, and that is observed and monitored by the green, monitored by this developed country. So we can slowly progress towards this sustainable environment and sustainable development. So being a national or global, environment decline obviously either it is a national or global thing. Environment is worldwide same because uh, environment is cannot go. It is beyond the barrier of territory of the different nations and countries because atmosphere, water, it is freely moving and freely available everywhere. So it does not obey the territory rule. So all countries should, in spite of all conflict, they come in front of and they should be tackle this issue simultaneously or jointly. So global warming occurs gradually decades and centuries, speaking of this space and time. Obviously, today the global warming is the major concern, and in spite of all this action, either national or global, it is going and keeping going and going on. So we must remember that clock is now ticking and need to the taking global action to combat this climate change. Otherwise, one day come where we cannot control these things. Control these things. It is the now it is the stage we can control this or combat this action by taking suitable action and by our setting that mindset that we have to develop the sustainability and sustainable development as well as sustainable environment for our future generation. So this is the time. If you lose that time, the clock or the time never waits anyone. So in future you should realize that yes, we have the time and we have not utilized that time wisely. So at that point you should have no time to recover that thing. So this is the time we should think. We should mean all country, all nations should think what is the necessary things that will be done by today that can be help in our future generation. So this action should be very fair and just equitable to all countries so that future will get a peaceful life, wealthyful life, and a standard life that does not compromise anything like us. So for our future generation, environment is most necessary, ecology is necessary, and the ecosystem restoration is necessary. So all economic as well as environmental growth, we are making a social impact, and that is achieve the sustainable development for all by making all joint ventures in spite of national global in spite of all conflict, in spite of all race. We should come forward and work in a together venture. This is very much necessary.
Let's start with the
All
documentary that
life
will
on
explain
Earth,
all
from
the
ecosystems to human civilization, is vulnerable to a changing climate. Scientific evidence now shows that the current human-caused global warming of 1.1 degrees Celsius is increasingly impacting nature and people's lives everywhere, despite efforts to adapt to the changing climate. More frequent and severe climate extreme events, such as heat waves over land and in the ocean, droughts and flooding, have caused widespread and pervasive impacts to ecosystems, people, cities and infrastructure, and limit the chances of a livable future for all. There is new knowledge that human-induced climate change caused these destructive impacts or makes them more likely.
This report is important because I think it really underscores the fact that the scientific evidence is now unequivocal. It's clear that climate change is impacting on the well-being of human societies, but also on the well-being of our planet. This report really brings us a new message, though, that those two things are not separate, that there's a very intimate relationship between our well-being, the well-being of our planet, and the forces that are driving climate change and the resulting impacts and responses that we may have to that challenge.
Since the last assessment report, the scientific evidence has increased and emphasized, based on observations of impacts, how the ecosystems and human society are changing under the influence of climate change. We see the losses and damages, and on both sides we have specific examples that indicate the underpinning mechanisms, and we are learning from that also for our projections as global warming is proceeding, what to expect for the future and what the future losses and damages will be if climate change cannot be stopped.
The extent and magnitude of climate change impacts are larger for each additional fraction of warming than estimated in previous assessments. So are the risks projected for the future. The impacts involve severe and widespread disruptions to nature and to society, reducing our ability to grow nutritious food or provide clean drinking water.
The poorest communities are the ones that are strongest hit by climate change, as they're least able to cope with the growing impacts. Our assessment indicates that there are between 3.3 and 3.6 billion people who live in such hotspots. These are spread across parts of Africa, South Asia, South and Central America, small islands, and the Arctic. Climate change acts like a stress multiplier in these regions, where people have limited access to clean drinking water, to sanitation, to health facilities or education. The livelihoods of people are also strongly dependent on climate-sensitive activities such as farming and fishing. They have limited access to funding, limited accountability from governments, and limited trust, therefore, in governments. Climate impacts are also felt differentially by men and women, as they have different roles and responsibilities in society.
This report shows that climate change is impacting every ecosystem across the globe, from high mountain ecosystems to the deep ocean, from tropical coral reefs all the way to Arctic ice-driven ecosystems. We see the fingerprint of climate change across all of these systems. One of the other things that the report really shows is that extreme events are increasing and their effects are rapidly changing ecosystems across the globe. So marine heat waves on land, storm events, these are driving changes to the ecosystems and species that we rely on. This is pushing species towards polar regions, it's pushing species to higher, cooler altitudes or down into the deeper, cool waters. And because of that, it has cascading impacts across ecosystems, but also people's livelihoods and societies that depend on the services that these ecosystems provide. And as we approach the limits of what species and ecosystems can tolerate, we risk crossing what we call tipping points, these critical places in the system where returning to previous conditions where recovery is less possible.
Climate change impacts are magnified in cities, where more than half of the world's population lives today. Heat waves amplify urban heat islands and air pollution in cities that affect people's health. Critical infrastructure within settlements, such as transportation, water, sanitation, and energy systems, have been compromised by extreme weather events. Cities and settlements by the sea are specifically impacted by climate hazards. They are at the front line of climate change, being directly exposed to interacting climate and non-climate coastal hazards, such as sea level rise and destruction of local ecosystems that previously protected people living along the coast.
Multiple climate hazards are also occurring simultaneously, with often cascading impacts. These impacts are becoming increasingly complex and challenging to manage. How these will affect nature and people depends on the speed and level of warming and how we adapt.
The Working Group 2 report of the IPCC shows that the impact of climate change is worsened by destruction of habitats, also unsustainable use of natural resources, deforestation, and growing urbanization and population growth trends. The report also found that for the African region, increasing urbanization is an important compounding factor for climate change. For the coastal areas of Africa, especially the low-lying coastal areas, population is increasing rapidly because of the economic opportunities that the coastal environment presents. Many people moving into the coastal areas live in informal settlements, marginal areas, and high-risk areas. And this has implications because the threats of climate change is compounded and the ecosystems and the people that rely on them are affected.
El reporte muestra que tenemos acciones de adaptación importantes en diferentes partes del planeta, pero los avances no son similares en diferentes regiones y de hecho no estamos haciendo suficientes esfuerzos para alcanzar los niveles de adaptación necesitados por los niveles actuales de calentamiento. Eso resulta en vacíos de adaptación importantes, especialmente en regiones de bajos ingresos como mi propio país, Guatemala, donde vemos barreras importantes que vienen no solamente de aspectos financieros, sino también de aspectos institucionales. La buena noticia es que sí tenemos acciones de adaptación que podemos hacer para reducir nuestros niveles de vulnerabilidad, pero la efectividad de estas acciones dependerá de los niveles de calentamiento. Por lo tanto, tenemos que tener tanto adaptación como mitigación trabajando mano a mano.
We also have evidence of what's called maladaptation. These are adaptation actions that result in unintended consequences. For example, coastal ecosystems that are destroyed through the construction of dikes and seawalls, or climate-related risks that are transferred to other regions or groups in society. Even greenhouse gas emissions can be increased through maladaptation. Our report shows that Indigenous peoples, ethnic minorities, and disadvantaged groups, such as low-income households and those living in informal settlements, are some of the most affected by maladaptation. Unfortunately, this reinforces and entrenches already existing inequalities.
The report shows that nature offers significant yet untapped potential to reduce climate risks, to deal with the causes of climate change, and to improve people's lives and livelihoods. However, nature needs space and protection to be able to provide those services.
By protecting and restoring 30 to 50% of our world's ecosystems on land and in the ocean, we help plants and animals build climate resilience. Nature, in turn, can help us regulate the climate, give us clean water, control pests and diseases, pollinate our crops, and provide nutritious food. Cities also provide a global opportunity to advance adaptation, mitigation, and sustainable development simultaneously. Using different adaptation strategies, such as nature-based and engineering approaches together, or providing social safety nets, can generate wider benefits for health, food security, and ecosystems. However, investing in nature and cities alone isn't enough. To secure a healthy, livable planet for everyone, we need to transform our way of life fundamentally. Taking action now gives us the best chance of success.
Where this report is different is that it puts humankind into context and emphasizes that we cannot abandon this context, because it emphasizes the relationship between three systems: climate, human society, and biodiversity, and indicates how these systems influence each other. Human society causes climate change, it causes biodiversity loss, and these interactions that are underpinning this are also the source of the solutions. With modifying these interactions, we can move into a sustainability space.
So I think one of the important advancements is not only talking about risk, but looking at the solutions that we have available to respond to that risk. But a list of solutions is not adequate. What we need to be able to do is determine the feasibility and effectiveness of those solutions and how they might be drawn into practice. And so it really gives practitioners guidelines about where is the best place to act, We've got very clear pointers, for example, to the protection of ecosystems and activities in cities as ways that we might be able to change the world.
The science is clear. Any delay in concerted global climate action means missing a brief and rapidly closing window to secure a livable future.
This report is a dire warning about the consequences of inaction. It shows that climate change is a grave and mounting threat to our well-being and a healthy planet. Our actions today will shape how people adapt to climate change and how nature responds to increasing climate risks. It recognizes the interdependence of climate, biodiversity, people, and it integrates natural, social, and economic sciences more strongly than earlier IPCC assessments. It emphasizes the urgency of immediate and more ambitious action to address climate risks. Half measures are no longer an option.
IPCC reports provide the most up-to-date science related to climate change for policymakers to inform their decisions on developing climate-related policies. Hundreds of scientists worldwide have volunteered their time and expertise to produce this report. IPCC reports go through an extensive review process by experts and government to achieve the highest quality. This process makes them policy relevant and policy neutral.
So this is all about climate change related to sustainable development. So it is necessary to take some actions, and that actions can be taken all together by all nations throughout, irrespective of all these conflicts, because this is the main goal or main thing that is can be combat the climate change, that is very much necessary to a sustainable future and sustainable development. So the main concern of this climate change is greenhouse gases and the greenhouse emissions, which can and causes different types of climate change, and the climate change that can be very actively growing day by day, and due to the development of the countries, we cannot reduce our greenhouse gas emission, but as well as we should minimize. We cannot stopping our greenhouse gases emission, but we just what happen? We just stop out this. We just reduce or minimize the greenhouse emission. And in this sector, India is the major contributor. In spite of India is a developing country, we should reduce greenhouse gas emission significantly. This is a very good thing. And this agenda for 2030, the greenhouse gases reduction is mainly focuses, and this can be interlinked with the other sustainable development goals that we are already discussed in our previous slides, like poverty. Number one goal is poverty. Number two goal is either hunger, zero hunger. So these are, if the climate change, if the our sustain is not sustainable, or we cannot take the action, then all things are come together. And so the developing country has a major role for implementing these policies, these rules, and these types of things in the whole world. So there is a lots of finance also needed, and lots of efforts also needed in order to take actions regarding these reductions of greenhouse gases and combat the climate change. Also, the biodiversity, the ecosystems, all are interlinked. So please go through details, and what is climate change, and what is how it is related to environment, how it is related to sustainable environment, and how it related to sustainable development. All things are very much important and interlinked. So all SDG United Nations are going to implement these things by 2030. That is the goal. That is not maybe or may not be. So we are progressing small and little by little. So with the help of other and the collaboration of all nation and the obeying of the policies and if one irrespective of all conflicts, this should be very much important to come out with the help of this climate change or with the help of this United Nations. All countries of the world should be come forward to take actions in this regard. So this is all about climate change and sustainable development. Next class we will study the different role of stakeholders, different policy making bodies, and what are the report of the different up to sustainable development goal report. Because 2015 we are going to implement or we are going to starting the sustainable development goals, that 17 goals. But now in 15 to 23, what is the progress? That you also monitor periodically. This is very much important. So next class we are going to study details on it. So please read these things, take all these necessary notes, and okay. Thank you. So we are stopping here. Thank you for active listening.